Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm talking about Rogue Squadron. And this is a Fate Accelerated tabletop role-playing game. And this is the second part of the adventure that my players were on. My players were Dom and Ted and Mike. And they were all playing Rogue Squadron X-Wing pilots, right? So basically, and they went by Mikhail. Ted's character was Mikhail, and Mike's character was Stryker, and Dom's character was Kojum. All right. So at that point, you have all these characters, and they have just been tasked by Mon Mothma to scout toward the Outer Rim, where half of the rebellion fleet is going to be sent into the Outer Rims and is going to assist Outer Rim people, the peoples of the Outer Rim, with rebuffing essentially predatory military forces that are not aligned to the Empire, right? So particular small planetary forces, bounty owner type forces, mercenary type forces, and just kind of aid with all the problems that are going on in the Outer Rim. And then the idea is that by aiding the people in the Outer Rim, they will get additional recruits, right? So at this point, one of the things that happens is they were in this command room, and Mon Mothma had talked this over with Princess Leia, all the starfighters, the different captains, the counselors that were there. And before our Rogue Squadron, which is Wedge Antilles, Tycho Selchu, Arisi Delaret, and then our 3-player characters, before they leave that room, one of them, the Iktochi Rogue Squadron pilot, who was played by Mike with the name Stryker, he's precognitive, right? So he actually specifically, Kojum asks Princess Leia, because she had supported one of his ideas. He said, hey, what did Princess Leia said, I support going into the Outer Rim, right? And so Kojum starts talking, and that's Dom's character. Kojum starts talking to Princess Leia and kind of just talking to her about the situation. And Princess Leia actually says, oh, well, I'm sorry to admit this, but I actually don't think we should go to the Outer Rim. I really thought we should do what Admiral Raddus said and press into the center and take Coruscant. I think that would be better for the rebellion. It's a stronger move militarily. And Kojum says, well, why did you say that, right? Why did you agree with me? And she said, well, I'm a noble, and Mon Mothma is an educated politician, and there are counselors in this room, and there are admirals in this room. But the reality is, I found that people who are closest to the fighting, people like yourself who, fly starfighters, those are the people who actually know what needs to be done. And while we have a place to supply guidance, one of the ways that we supply guidance is just stopping and listening to the mechanics within the rebellion, the starfighters within the rebellion, the people who literally mop the floors on our starships, And I've become very aware that, we need to start listening. And so that, Princess Leia had said that, and Kojum said, thank you again for supporting my position. And at that point, Princess Leia says, no problem. And at that point, she starts to head out of the room, and she just says, good luck. And she just, pats a hand on the shoulder of the Iktochi, Rogue Squadron male X-Wing pilot, and which Stryker. And at that point, the precognitive, now that Princess Leia has actually touched him, he actually gets a precognitive vision. And so he gets the precognitive vision of Princess Leia speaking to Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi, and explaining how, but only the part where he explains how she has the Force, right? And how she's Force sensitive, right? So now, the Iktochi opens his eyes, and, he realizes that, while there's this thought that there are no more Jedis, he now realizes that Princess Leia has the power to be a Jedi, right? And no one else in the rebellion knows this, not even Princess Leia, right? Now, the first thing I did with this piece of information is I said, all the other pilots, including your compatriots, Kojum and Mikhail, have left the room, and you're standing there alone, and you actually literally wake up with Wedge Antilles shouting from the top of the room saying, "Stryker, we're supposed to be out of here. You should be getting your X-Wing ready. You need to pay attention," right? So that was kind of fun. I enjoyed giving a little grief there. So Stryker, hurries up. They all get their X-Wings kitted out, and I gave them so one of the things I really like to do, it's probably my most favorite thing in tabletop role-playing games, is to set decisions in front of the players just almost constantly, and then see how their thoughts work out, and also to give them a sense that this world is controlled by you, not me, right? Now it's difficult to do this. As your game master, you have an incredible amount of control over the game. And I think, more and more good game masters realize that the more control they hand over to players, the more they incent their players to actually, make decisions within the game and to change that world, the better the game is. So one of the things is they kitted out their X-Wings, and one of the decisions they had to make was the proton torpedoes. So I said, you have your cannons, your wing cannons on the X-Wings, but you also have your proton cannons, right? Now, if you would like, you guys are going out, you're going on a long scouting mission. You can replace your photon torpedoes with planetary supplies, like things like grappling hooks and rations and extra rations and electrical equipment and repair equipment, all these kind of things, right? So they all think about it, and the only person who even remotely took the bait was Ted. And Ted traditionally said, "I'd like to take half of the planetary rations and half of the proton torpedoes," which drives me crazy, right? Because that's the entire point, is I'm putting a decision in front of you and I want you to make a decision. If you say both, in my opinion, you're not making a decision, right? And I did tell them, listen, they're going to empty your torpedo bays and they're going to turn off the switches that fire those proton torpedoes. If you take both, you're going to have, one bay with torpedoes, and the other one will shoot out, granola, right? So, so basically so at that point, Ted did take, Ted's character, Mikhail, actually did take planetary supplies, and Stryker and Kojum both took they took their proton torpedoes and made sure that they had those torpedoes in their bays, right? So at that point, I gave them one more decision on kitting out their X-Wings, and that was the buzzard droids. So the Rebellion mechanics had taken the buzzard droids that were in the prequels and loaded like 6 of them into the same slot. That they had the ability now to take the same slot that an R2 unit would go into and load them with buzzard droids. These droids that in the prequels were used to crawl all over a starfighter and literally tear it apart. Now the same buzzard droids that could kind of tech like a spider all over the X-Wing could go out and grab all of the, could actually repair the ship while in flight, which is kind of a big change. So I asked him, who wants buzzard droids, who wants an R2 unit? So Kojum took the buzzard droids, everybody else took an R2 unit. So that was another fun decision. So at this point, they fly out into the Outer Rim, and and at that point, we actually took the time. We used a map within. Oh, that's another thing. So one of the things that I really like about Fate Accelerated Edition, and I highly recommend, the best way to run Fate. So really, Fate Accelerated is very interesting. It has no native world, right? The idea is you take the Fate Accelerated rules and you just attach them to whatever world you like. So we have played the Fantasy Flight games, Star Wars games, and I love those games. I own all 3 of them. They use these special dice, but they are a blow-by-blow combat system, right? And so they're this very traditional tabletop role-playing game that really, I think I'm really starting to move away from these games where you play and you talk about your story and you talk about characters for 45 minutes and then you have a 2-hour combat, right? And I know millions of people still play this way, and I played this way for decades and I really loved it. But at this point, I'm super hyper into lightning fast storytelling, and Fate Accelerated allows me to do that, right? So it literally has the word accelerated in the title, right? So what I did was we used the Fantasy Flight games tabletop role-playing game books, and what I did, like for instance, that allowed us to look at a star map that had every single planet for Star Wars in it, and allowed the players to literally determine their path and what path they would go. So they took the Corellian Freighter Airlines and kind of Corellian Freighter Lines trade routes and followed those, which was really, really a fun decision. I really liked that. I thought that was really cool, and I just love using the maps in there, right? The other thing is when the players chose which fighters they would use, they were able to go through all the fighters that were in the FFG game, right? And so this was I feel like this is one of the best plays to play Fate Accelerated, is take the tabletop role-playing game book from another system, right, like FFG, and then just put the Fate Accelerated rules on top of that. The other thing that you could do is the DK books are great for this, right? So the DK books are like these visual guides. So like for instance, I own a DK book for Warhammer, World of Warcraft, right? So I could take that DK book, and with just that one DK book, that tells me the vast majority of all the characters within that world, and I can get running that game for Fate Accelerated right away. So with a DK book or a core rule book and the Fate Accelerated, you could really dive into, with very, very specific accuracy, knowing what weapons are in that world with really specific titles, and what vehicles are in that world and what powers are in that world. And it's great because everything then just becomes aspects. All these titles and all become aspects. And then you can use some of the attributes that are within those books to differentiate, right? And there's this thing called flattening that I'll explain in another time. But differentiation is a big deal, and it's one way that you can do this. So basically, we use the maps, and they determined that they're going to use Corellia, and they went from Harran to closer to the Outer Rim, and they come into this empty sector, and so they've only gone about 2 sectors toward the Outer Rim, and their job is to check around, see what they see, and then send a call back to the Rebellion fleet saying, okay, all clear, come on through, right? Well, when they get there, what they find is they find Imperials. So they actually find a force that the Imperial Star Destroyers had left behind, and there are 30 traditional TIE fighters, and there are 6 TIE Defenders, right? Now, this is a really cool TIE fighter type. It essentially, it has the central pod, and then it has these sets of foiled wings. It has 3 wings, so the vast majority of TIE fighters have 2 wings, right? Well, this has 3 sets of wings coming off the central pod. Really super cool looking starfighter with some major firepower. They're so prototypey that they're generally only given to the Imperial's best shooters. Now, the 6 TIE defenders, they're all sitting in like a docking bay. Actually, I use these a lot in Star Wars. Essentially, these very much like a floating starport. Not really a star point, but like almost like a floating garage, right? So they're all being worked on. They're all being kind of repaired, right? Or having new modifications put onto them. You know, so the players know that they're actually, you know, they're kind of locked in and they're not ready to fight. All the other traditional TIE fighters are not locked in and they are ready to fight, right? So that's where, you know, we get to the point where we've and then also there are 6 freighters, Imperial freighters, and these are unarmed freighters, right? I'm sorry, yeah, there were 3 freighters, sorry about that. So at that point, you know, we determined that this was the force that they had encountered, and then the players had to make a decision on what they were going to do with that. And I'll tell you about what decision they made later. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.